Want some feedback forms? Sure. Maybe. Thank you.
Call this meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance to start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's quiet.
We're all here. Number 2, public communication. We don't have any written correspondence. Nothing from Ovid-Elsie personnel. Nothing from communications from the public. So number 3 is interviews. I want to welcome the community members and staff that came tonight. Thank you for taking the time to join us for our first round interviews of the Ovid-Elsie Area School Superintendent Search. Please know that if you, as members of the audience, want to provide feedback, you can complete the feedback forms and turn them in following the interview. The forms are on the table by the door, and after completion, they'll be copied and distributed to all board members. So now we're just going to wait a couple minutes until our first candidate is brought in.
No, I'm not going to be waiting. I do a lot.
Anyone want to? Have you ever had it before? Have you had it? No? Have you had it? Nothing else, but
What's it called?
the pipes you put on Japanese. They're pretty good. You won't want to. You won't want to? Really? Good. Yeah.
first candidate for this evening, Mr. Michael Dunn from the Wise Hands.
Nice to see you.
Hi, Mary.
Yes. Thanks for coming down.
All right, well, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. We're going to take turns each asking you questions. So I'm going to go first. I'm Board President Brooke. We've had the opportunity to review your resume. Please tell us how your background and experience make you a good fit to be our next superintendent. How will you demonstrate that the success of students is a priority?
Well, first and foremost, thank you again. I'm very honored that you chose my resume to come in front of you today, so thank you for that. When looking at the criteria that was put forth from the board and the selection criteria, it was very clear. You're looking for someone with K-12 teaching experience. Talking to a guy here who not only did I teach high school and middle school, but in the pandemic as an elementary principal, I had to teach second grade for a while. I've taught third grade for a while, and obviously they didn't turn out too bad. They're now at the middle school level, but I absolutely have taught everything from at the elementary level, pitching as a principal, to, they said, at the high school, middle school level. And then I'm blessed to be able to teach a little online college. So really see the full gamut. You're looking for somebody with school finance, and that is something that's well within my wheelhouse. Everything we're working on right now with the issues, if you've been paying attention, there's some concern about the funding from the state. We're trying to offset some of that, and that work doesn't happen because it just happens. It happens because people get together and do that. And I'm one of the many that get together and we're always focused. One of the other areas in your criteria you mentioned was about school turnaround and academic improvement. And on my resume, I think you'll see numerous accolades of where we worked as a team to actually turn around a school many different times. Going from an F to an A, going from poor performing to being a reward school. So we've done that, and I know how to do that with people without hurting anybody and actually enjoying doing it. And then last but not least, one of the other areas was curriculum development. Obviously, I think that goes without saying with some of the work. So when I think about Ovid-Elsie, when I think about when we talk about creating a world-class education, we've got to have that lens of that we're doing whatever it takes to do what we can for every student, to maximize what we have, to get the best that we have. If I'm your guide, you're going to hear a word from me all the time, which is AROI, which is academic return on investment, which my dad would say, college boy, what does that mean? And I'd say, are we getting the biggest bang for our buck? And that's got to be a lens we use in everything, from strategic planning to the visioning to everything we do. Are we getting what we need from what we're paying out and putting time, effort? And if we're not, why are we doing it? And so that is the lens that we have to have for everything. What we do is so important. And so when we think about what is the return on that investment for our kids, we have to have that lens. That's how we become world class.
All right, thank you. Our next question will be asked by Vice President Sukan.
Hello, what practices and procedures do you or would you use to develop trust and confidence with your board and keep them informed?
So one of the things I've learned, I got to sit in many times last year for the superintendent. Unfortunately, his wife was dealing with some health issues. So what I learned having to be in that role, it seems like every time he was gone, we had something. And you just can't keep a board up to date with a weekly memo. When we have things, regardless of how big or small we may think it is, we work and live in small communities, period. And one of the things I learned right away was, anytime something bubbled up, the first call I made was to our board president and said, give me a heads up, I'm learning more, we're looking at an investigate, whatever it may be. And as soon as I knew more, I immediately then sent a text to all the board members to let them know where we're at, what we're doing, and what we're hoping to achieve. And as we progressed, now mind you, we had a bus driver incident that wasn't pretty. We had a teacher incident that wasn't pretty, and then we had a student behavior threat that wasn't pretty. So these were really big, eminent things that we were trying to get ahead of. Not that we'd ever hide it, but we needed to try to get ahead and get everyone, because our board members are in our community. And we don't ever want members out there calling us to say, hey, I heard what is going on. We need to be as proactive as possible. So I knew that to be true, and that's what we did. So after about the third time, about the fourth or fifth, finally, the board kept saying, Mike, it's okay. We trust you because you walk the talk. You do what you say you're going to do. If you say, I'm going to follow up with you, you do it, and you do it immediately. If I say that we don't know, then you don't lie. You don't. I don't know. But here are the questions we're looking to get answered. And as soon as we get answers, we share that out. Because you need to know just as much as we need to know. That's how it works. And as we do that together, I think that's how we build trust. There's a little bit of blind trust to start, but the reality is you've got to earn it, and you earn it by communicating, thoroughly communicating. I do want to add that you got to be open door. You've got all these other things that kind of go understood. So of course I keep an open door. You got to do text. You got to do other things. And as you keep engaging with your board, we did have a couple of board members that would be kind of silent. It's just because they're busy. One's a pastor. But you have to follow up and make sure, did you check that email? Did you get that? Did you see? And then solicit it, because you've got to make sure they're engaged and you've got it. Because sometimes things that it goes unnoticed, you don't know. So again, you've got to make sure that we're engaging you, make sure you're getting it, and then sharing that all back out with everybody. Because everyone needs to know that.
How will you introduce yourself?
How will you introduce yourself to the Ovid-Elsie community and maintain engagement with these stakeholders?
So I think the first thing that would be the easiest to start off with is that what I learned from the previous superintendent is that I created a video at least to get that out to everybody as an introduction, just so that people can see a face, a name, and a little background. After that, though, I would do exactly what I did in Washack, which is you would see me out in our schools, seeing our principals, our kids, trying to, like I said, be at lunch, putting names to faces with the teachers, and just being there, being present, and saying, hey, what's your name? How is lunch? By the way, I'm your new superintendent. I'm, Dr. Michael Dunn. The kids say Mr. It's okay. I don't care if it's Mr. or Doctor. It doesn't matter. What matters is I'm a friendly guy who helps lead our schools. That's what matters. And you get out there and do that. You'll see me at the community events. You'll see me at the sporting events. If we have back to school, like at Dewashing, we have back to school week. I was at every one of those open houses and parent nights, meeting and greeting students, parents, helping out. So again, you have to be present. I believe I'm a highly visible leader. I mean, most people recognize me when I'm at the football game or the basketball game. And so they'll come up, and a lot of times it's because they talk to me on the phone. And they're like, you're the guy. You're that bald guy I heard about that, took care of my transportation problem. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I did. And I'm like, well, I'm so-and-so. And it's it. They seem to know me because I'm always working, rolling up to sleep. So again, you've got to be out there, getting your face, and doing that. And then as well as being in the community. And so, again, I think you'll see all of that. Going forward, though, that's just the initial push. How do you continue engagement? You've got to be willing to, put forth like student advisory groups, parent advisory groups. You've got to have, coffee sometimes. Go to the country kitchen here and have a couple mornings where you're having coffee with people. You can go to the library, or you have it here, and you can have some focus groups, or just listen and learn sessions. And so you do those things. I've learned that from several superintendents. Those are highly effective. So again, we would continue to do those on top of finding other ways to get feedback with two-way feedback channels from our folks. Surveys and getting them, give us information back.
we are in situations where our role is less about being the one to come up with the creative ideas and more about facilitating the creative process or helping others get their ideas implemented. Describe a time when you played this type of role. What did you do to facilitate the process, and what were the results?
So one of my favorite quotes is that if you're the smartest person in the room, then obviously you're in the wrong room. And I love that because the reality is we have lots of people who have great ideas, and we need to make sure we're listening and helping that to happen. That's how innovation occurs. So as of right now, my superintendent, who is new to us, has said, I want to see us change how we do kindergarten routing. We have 4 elementaries, we're doing 4 different things. I'd like to see how we do that. So, real simply, it could have been top-down, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to do it, and have it done. That's not what we did. We brought our elementary principals together, I brought our kindergarten teachers together, and we've been meeting and discussing about, through a kind of an appreciative inquiry base, which is we look at strengths, we look at opportunities, we look at the advantages we have, and we say, okay, what are we doing well? How might we get better? How might this idea be something that we can entertain? What would be pros, cons, and again, trying more on positive less than the negative. But how do we look at getting something maybe better for our kids, our parents? And what we've ended up creating, we're knee deep now in planning with total buy-in, knowing that we'll have a health department, we'll have all our teachers, we'll have speech language pathology, we'll have everybody at one place. And we will now, what we think, instead of having to an hour and a half experience for parents, it's going to be close to 30 to 45 minutes. So not only is it going to be a better experience for our parents, but we'll be able to work as a team and get it together. And so that's what we're doing right now. In the past, I've had principals who come up and said, with our former superintendents, Mike, I want to do something different with suspension. I want to do something different with restorative practice. Yeah, we need to discipline kids, but we've got to do something different because we're not doing it. So what is it you have in mind? And we start working through that. And what we ended up creating was, we call them student intervention groups, or student intervention time for these rooms. And it's not timeout. It's not detention. It's not study hall. It is a place for 10, 15 minutes, maybe the whole period. Kids come in, we decompress them, we debrief, and we work them through. We have counselors, behavior interventionists. We work through all of that, and then we get them back. And what we saw was a 50% reduction in discipline at our middle school alone this year, where kids actually stopped the pathway to suspension. And actually, again, knock on wood, looking at M-STEP scores, we think we're going to see again a continued increase with the academics. And that's not because it was my idea. It was because we had some great people with great ideas, and having someone then to say, okay, let's talk about how do we make this happen, because we can.
Consider your past accomplishments. What are some of the reasons for your success? How have you overcome the difficulties you may have encountered?
So without a doubt, the whole reason, the end all is because we were a team. We had success because of being a team. Now, without a doubt, leadership does matter. Absolutely does matter. The right leader, facilitating, fostering the team is how we get to be high effective teams. And that's what we did together as a team. We did it together. That's how it works. So when you look at, we were a Title I high-performing school for closing the achievement gap. We were the only school in Indiana that had that twice. You usually get it once in a full cycle. We got it twice. When we look at being F schools in Indianapolis becoming B and C schools. When we look at Buchanan, which should have been high-performing schools to begin with, were not, and became a reward, first time ever, a reward school for that district. That didn't happen because Mike Dunn was in the district. It happened because Mike Dunn was there helping to facilitate a team, working with the great talent that was already there. We just had to, you get someone in there to help make it together. Got great items there we can put together and put it out. So it's being a team. And so how did we do that? We created collective commitments. We had norms and expectations. We held each other accountable. And when, at first, that was hard, we had to point to our collective commitments. We had to point to our norms and expectations and work through that. And I had to lead that. And then over time, we had teacher leaders and other people who can help do and would hold each other accountable. Because at the end of the day, we could point and say, we may not agree, we may not all agree or believe, but at the end of the day, this is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to achieve. And this is what we collectively committed to doing. Just like our highly effective teachers in their classrooms, when they create classroom constitutions or they create the classroom rules together. It's no different at the administrative level. We do it together as a team, as a collective.
How do you recruit, retain, develop, and lead a management team? Give us an example of how you've done this in the past.
Sure. So in Indianapolis, I was very blessed to have some very bright administrators. Unfortunately, they are, we ran, and please, I know it was charter, but we became better. But in that charter world, they didn't know how to really lead buildings. They're very smart guys, just didn't know how to lead. And so we had that. On top of, we had assistant principals just churning out every year, just new people coming in. And so one of the first things we did was we sat down and did needs assessments and tried to figure out what would the straight-faced approach we would take with our leaders. And we looked at them and tried to figure out what it was that needed, how we could help and support. And then we started working and training together. We trained them up. We started weekly meetings, coaching sessions, and then we just continued to invest and develop in them. By the time I left, they still had about 100% retention rate of that admin team for about 3 more years. And then, of course, the tides turned, and because they filled within from the people that had been there, they're still at all the people they brought in. So the system still works. Here in Dowagiac, I inherited some really green elementary principals, but very seasoned secondary principals. So again, it was easy to walk in with elementary principals, do needs assessment, figure out what we need to do, doing bi-monthly check-ins, out there working and coaching them, and then, providing, getting them PD when needed. But then with the season, it was even better because I could work with them and ask them to be more self-directed and self-guided, and they would give me direction about where they wanted to grow. They were looking for somebody to help grow, and then we worked on that together. I do want to see, you did ask about retention, and one of the biggest things we brought on a new assistant principal at the middle school. And how we brought that on was we had to recruit. We had to go out, and we had to, so we used our network. So that was one of the things that I tend to do, is I'm the guy you don't want to see at your campus, because I'm usually looking to poach somebody and try to get them to come over to my place, because we usually have something to offer. And that's value. It may not be money, but it's usually value and investment in people. So you've got to be willing to get out there and recruit and put your name out there in networks and all those things. Otherwise, they're just not going to come knock on your door.
Tell us your role as superintendent. Tell us what your role as superintendent is in budget development process and how you've been involved in your past roles.
So as a superintendent, regardless of how large or small, it should be a very integral role. And it should be, I want to say hands-on, but I don't want it sounding like it's micromanagement. It should be knowing and keeping a pulse. Because at the end of the day, the board itself is a fiduciary unit. It is your job to ensure that it is solvent and it's doing the best with the money you have. And that's why you have, in the business world, a CEO or a superintendent. Someone who is keeping that pulse and a mind on the books. And so, yeah, you have a business manager who's doing the facilitating and all those other things, but you have to be working with that person and making sure that, again, very integral. We do about a month, my superintendent likes to do a month check-in with our business manager. Because what happens in that month, each month, there's myself, we have a director of grants, and business manager who are meeting already together and keeping the pulse and looking at all the allocations and line items. And the issue there for us is that there's a lot of moving parts in our budget. We have a big budget with this 30 million, I mean, we have lots of grants. And so we're always having to keep multiple people looking and monitoring that. And then as we see and know, we report that back up and meet with our superintendent. What I know to be true from Indianapolis is that we would work, so I would work with the superintendent and the business manager, and we bring our principals in, and we did zero-based budgeting, which is totally a different world than school budget, but we did zero-based budgeting, and then we would actually have a dashboard we put in for the board, which would put out expenses, revenue, so we'd understand what cash flow was, so they had an idea of where we were, how we were doing, so then we can make sure we made payroll. In Dowagiac, it's a little different. We have different monitoring pieces in there. We just didn't revisit that. We're facing about a 1.2 million budget shortfall based on what we think will happen. Now, the state may miraculously come back with a different view, but knowing what we think we know, we're about 1.2 million short. And we actually think we're about 50% reduced from that shortfall without hurting any education whatsoever to students. We think we found about $600,000 with reallocation of different money, being innovative, with some of the grants. We really worked hard so it doesn't impact. And that's what a superintendent does. They get in the weeds and try to figure out how to move and make money happen so it does what we need to do, which is impact students in the most best way we can.
All right, tell us how your previous professional experiences have influenced you as a leader.
So I've had a lot, and sometimes that's good or bad, but what I've learned from some great experiences is that, one, you have to go slow to go fast. You just can't come in as the adage, you just can't be a bull in the china shop, right? You've got to be willing to come in, take some time, learn, and build. But I've also learned, don't miss out on those opportunities where you can go fast. There's some times where there's a momentum already there, and you've got the buy-in, and there's a hesitation to want to jump on because you don't want to look going too fast. But you've got to not overlook those opportunities, because usually those are the opportunities that help you move into innovative solutions. So slow to go fast. Some of the other things I've learned is that to learn to be very, humble and to listen more. I'm an extrovert, so I know I talk more than my fair share. So I've learned to listen more, ask better questions, and shut my mouth. Mom says, God gave you 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason, and she's right. So I've learned to do that. But the biggest lesson I've learned is that it's not about the what, it's the how. And I'm going to write a book one day, and I'm going to give it out for free because I think everyone should read it. Everyone can pretty much, at the end of the day, agree about the what. We really can't. It's how, though, we go about that. And that's where we get tripped up. And that's what I've learned. The biggest piece is that we're going to have issues, we're going to have differences, but the what are we doing, and how we go about that matters the most. And so I've used that as I've moved through the years. And so far, like I said, it seems to be working because I've set my evaluations, I've said some other things to you. So I would assume I'm doing a pretty decent job there. Otherwise, someone would be writing me up saying, hey buddy, we got some issues here.
Okay, please tell us about a time when you have evaluated and adjusted your communication style to ensure stakeholders feel well-informed and engaged.
So in every place that I've been, we've kind of had to, you've got to differentiate. So when I first started as a principal in Plymouth, we had a community very much wanted to be well-informed and involved. And so we had a great superintendent who helped us led an initiative called the Ball Bridge Improvement Model, where we solicited feedback like nobody's business. So if, for instance, you visited one of the school offices, good, bad, or ugly, you visited, you were going to get a survey. And then in the survey, we would ask you things like, What do you think of the climate and the environment? Was your issue resolved? To what extent? What could have been done better? We took all of that. Every parent-teacher conference we held, I had to go out and survey all my parents and then collect a whole bunch of data. That's scary because you're thinking, great, we just sent all these parents in to hear the good, bad, and ugly, and now we're saying, hey, how did we do? And you know you're not going to make everyone happy. And so we would get this feedback back. And so from that feedback, we would then post that and say, here's what we have, here's what we've learned, here's what we're addressing. And we also had a lot of good kudos and positive things that came out of that. But that's what we had to do for that community. In Indianapolis, it's totally different. We had a lot of single moms, cared, wanted to be involved. I mean, just because of poverty and everything else, we had to reinvent ourselves, and we did more evening activities where we would provide a meal, we'd have something for the kids, so they didn't have to worry about feeding them or having to worry about daycare, and they could come, and then we could have some talks. And so we carved out time to do some things we wanted to share, but we carved out a lot of time to let them vent or get feedback from them. And that worked very well. We had about 10% every time, so like out of our West Campus, we had 540 kids. We'd have about 50 parents that show up. Okay? That's a lot. In Buchanan, we were coming through the pandemic. A lot of my mamas wanted to do the PTO meetings virtually. We'd have 2 or 3 that show up, but once we were coming out of the pandemic, we continued with the virtual. We'd have 13, 14 parents. They're great moms. They're having wine, their kids are running around in the background, and they're involved, and they could be a part of that instead of trying to figure out how do I get to the school. And so in Dowagiac, we've again reinvented, we've created together a communication plan, and we're doing the same thing. We know that based on the new electronic newsletters we have, our parents are very excited and highly engaged with that. They feel that they're finally getting a lot of information right away, in addition to Facebook and all the other things we're doing. And our next step in that plan is how we solicit, because we're giving it forward, we're just trying to figure out how to get it back and get that feedback back.
Please share an example of a time you have led a sustained multi-year improvement initiative. Be specific regarding the situation, the task at hand, your specific role in the outcome.
So in Dowagiac, we're currently in year 3 of, I don't think it's ever going to end because of the work we do, but we're in year 3 of our vision of reading. And when I came on board, the board at that time was very adamant, when I came on board, that we would change what we were doing. They were tired of seeing kids not learning to read. They were tired of seeing our kids perform as poorly as they were. And they got tired of hearing that poverty was an issue, or that when we looked at schools like us, well, we did just as well as the schools like us. They were very tired of that for 18 years, tired of that. And they expected change. So the first thing we did was create our vision of reading. We started putting that science of reading ahead of the curve, because Michigan's finally catching up, but we started with the science of reading, bringing that forward, and we have worked together slowly but surely, having created in K-5 with our literacy maps. We now have the Dowagiac way of how we do reading, and on top of that, we've created stretch goals in NWA, and give you a quick example of that. If you make your yearly goal in NWA and you're still in the hole, you're still in the hole. So if you're a red kid or an orange kid and you made a year's worth of growth, you're still red if you're red, you're orange if you're orange. We have kids making stretch growth, which means that they went from red to orange or orange to yellow. It can be done. 60% of my kids in Dowagiac are direct certified. That means they're already 2 demarcations in the poverty line. They are already in the government system to get services. That's 60%. Let them learn my kids. I got 20 more percent of free reviews. By no means, our kids are done. We had to have a vision. We had to champion and get a strategic plan together. And so we worked through that. So in year 3, where we're at with that, which is phenomenal, it has led to us using some grant money. We took advantage of a huge grant we got to be able to fast track a textbook adoption this year. Instead of waiting for next year, we sped up a year and brought in, we're going to have new textbooks and new materials in reading. And all that because we have a plan. so that we know how to go slow, go fast, and monitor along the way. So the results, first year, so second year we did first year for results. We had 60% of our kids meet their annual yearly goal, with 40% meeting stretch goals. This year, it's projected as of right now to have about 70% meet the annual, with about 50% meeting the stretch goals. So half of our kids are closing the gap. And we also have iReady. We're going to eventually get rid of NWA, and we're going to do iReady moving forward. Our iReady data shows that our students who are 2 or more years behind, below grade level, 50% or better, have closed that gap year after year. So it's a matter of time that Dowagiac's going to be a school on the map, that someone's going to come knocking on the door and say, you used to be at 30%. How did you get 50%? It's because we have a plan. We work together as a team through that plan, knowing about what we want to achieve and getting the buy-in in that.
Please tell us about your experience with labor negotiation and human resource management.
So this last summer, we just finished, we did the financials. So we did financials last summer. And working through that because it does hit our budget hard this year, and it will level out and it will be better the next couple years. But we knew we were going to take a hit this first year, but we did that. This year, we're working on language. So we're hitting those prohibited subjects that are no longer prohibited. So we're going to work on those pieces. What I was able to do for my superintendent, because my new guy doesn't want anyone at the table other than himself. And that's fine. Everyone has their own leadership style, and my job is to do my best to support whoever my guy is, or gal is. So my guy likes for me to support him from behind, so that's what I do. So with the financials last summer, as we were working through, I was able to help with the negotiation on creating a calendar that took our teachers from 186 days to 180 days. And we were able to utilize PD for instructional time. Now, why does that matter? It matters because time is money. So although they're getting the same salary, they're getting it out of 180 days, not 186 days. Time is money. Their per diem is higher. We looked at meetings. There's a lot of concentration about the meetings and how we do. So we worked behind the scenes about how we could facilitate the meetings we did this year. Because again, time is money. So we can't always give money, but we can give things that are money. And so that's what we did. This year, I've got a list of about 20 different arcane old language things, for instance, that just have to come out. We don't have long distance calls anymore. That just doesn't happen. We don't create report cards by hand anymore. So there's about 20 of those things that just need to come out because they're just old. I mean, our new teachers wouldn't have a clue what that is. So we're working to get those out. But with prohibited subjects, I'm working to ensure that we have some win-win language so that when we get to the teacher evaluation piece, we can work with what the law says. So that, the law is suggested that you can have a 2-3 year cycle. Absolutely. Why would we not want to give principals the opportunity and our teachers to be on a 2 or 3 year cycle? So instead of evaluating these teachers year after year after year, we know they're doing well. Yeah, we'll keep a pulse. Yeah, we'll have data. We'll have all these things we'll know and keep track of. But all the mundane work that goes with it, why? When I could be using that time to work with our new teachers who need the help. Because they're not coming in like they used to. They need a lot more support. And so we're going to have some opportunities for win-win language this year that I think are going to make the prohibited subjects that no longer are prohibited much easier. But again, I'm used to being at the table. So every place I've been in negotiations, I'm used to being there and again, working through, again, what is best and doing what we can. And being honest. I mean, if you have only so much money, you got to put that out there. This is what we have. This is where we're willing to put it. This is all I got. You can complain all you want about it, but this is, at the end of the day, is what it is. So we try to find ways, again, to honor and create win-win when we can.
Please describe how you have engaged and supported staff members in a way that is meaningful to them. How do you know they felt supported?
So when I came to Buchanan, my teachers and not just in my building, but in the other elementary building. They had done a lot of work with learning about professional learning communities or PLCs, and they said, Mike, your background. I said, yeah. They said, PLCs. I said, yeah. They said, we're tired of hearing about it. I said, okay, tired of hearing about it, let's do it. We just did it. We jumped in, and we started in year one. We actually started with math. I got the teachers to commit. I had to give up something, so we didn't have staff meetings. So I gave up that, and they gave me their plan period, one plan period every week. So we had a win-win there. I helped our special teachers, art, music, helped them to understand the importance of the work, and they started helping cover some recess time to help give back a little extra time, because they did have a lot more prep time. So we were trying to figure out how we could balance. And so then we started working through PLCs. And what my teachers found in that first year, which translated through the pandemic in the second year and then the third year, what translated was that in the second year we brought on ELA. And as we brought on ELA, English and reading, they gave up another plan period. Willingly gave up another plan period. They didn't have to ask for it, they gave it up. And in our third year, the district said we need to put value into this. And we carved out, with our community, giving a 30-minute release time and using some 30-minute meeting time that we weren't using. So we were able to do that afterwards. But regardless, my teachers, after that first year, got the other building on board because they said, when we meet, we get things done. We actually feel like we are planning. We actually feel like we're not spinning wheels. I'm not spending time after school having to look for this or do, and find all these other things. We leave knowing what the plan is. As Mike says, we know our nose and shows. We know what we need to know. We know how to show it, and we're going to get our kids to do it. And we all know what the resources we're going to use. You've got people doing division of labor, people helping and getting resources. I did my part. I would make copies of common assessments and give them in their mailboxes. Eventually, we moved them to Google Forms. I showed them how to use a Google Form, and I graded them for them, so now they're saving time. But all of that worked together, just listening to them about we heard, we know, we want to do, and they saw such value that in the year 3, I didn't have to facilitate them. I had teacher leaders being able to facilitate, so then I could go around to each of the grade levels and be a part of it then. And they're still doing it to this day.
Please tell us about a time when your performance did not meet your expectations. What you learned from that and how you applied those lessons.
So early on, as a principal in Plymouth, we had gone from an F school to an A school. Back in the day, we used to call it adequate yearly progress. We didn't meet it before I came on board. We met it, and we were doing great. We were in A school for a few years, and we rested on our laurels. And so my teacher said, hey, we want to do science and social studies in the reading block. I said, oh, sure, that's not a problem. I met with them less on the data rooms because I had full trust that, hey, we're getting results, doing whatever. And then out of the blue, scores came back and we were a B, barely a B. We were almost a C+. We were barely a B school in Indiana. And of course, our board and a whole bunch of people came, again, not my teacher, that me, Mike, what the heck are you doing? How did you go from this to this? So we had to do some, analysis of that. Well, here's what we found out. We found out that, yeah, they were great at teaching the content of science and social studies, but they weren't teaching the reading skill that was needed. And so that had an impact. I looked at the walkthroughs. We did lots of walkthroughs. My walkthroughs were not during the small group time. They were during whole group time. And particularly to one grade level in particular where it had the lowest performance. So again, I wasn't checking what I should have been checking about how that translated, because again, we were resting on our laurels. So the moral of that story is, every good garden needs tending. And so as a good gardener, you have to be willing to be in there tending, monitoring, feeding, watering. You've got to continue. You just can't say that I had a great garden last year, it's going to continue to grow and give me the same production next year. And as a good gardener or a farmer, you don't build the crops. You don't eat the crops. You water, you feed, and you give them some, you do all those things and monitor that along the way.
Please tell us about a challenge you've experienced in bringing a group with varying perspectives to consensus on a difficult issue. How did you lead and communicate, and what was the final outcome?
So when I came to Dowagiac, I inherited, I won't say a mess, but we inherited a situation where they're in the middle of a math adoption, and it was just a mess. So they had a system where K2 did one thing, 3-5 did another. They had kept the same materials for at least 2 adoption cycles, so they had been deep rooted in what they've done forever. And they were partway through an adoption, and they did come to some sort of consensus, and it was a matter of, we were struggling to find what it was going to be. And I said, okay guys, you really don't want to set me up for my first year, so I'm like, well, here we go. Here's the non-negotiable. We need to have something that's K-5, and we need to have something that's evidence-based, or at least supported with evidence-based work. Other than that, I don't care. You're the experts. I truly believe you're going to be the experts. So what I'm asking for is it's going to be K-5, and it's going to be evidence-based aligned. That's it. We went back to the drawing table. I had brought our grade level chairs. I brought our teachers together with grade level chairs, and we went through and looked at pros and cons and reevaluated the new materials they had. Because what was happening is, without doing that, they were getting back into the whole diatribe of, well, K2 wants us to do this, 3-5 wants us to do this. And I get that. They've done it for a long time. They felt really good with it. Well, we weren't getting results with it. But again, we felt good with what we were doing. Change is hard. I get it. But we went back to the table. And then what we found out through all that work, and we did some surveying, ended up being 70% had landed on one curriculum. And those who didn't choose the first one, the second choice they happened to have chosen was the first one that people chose. So it was real easy to say, hey, this was a second choice. And by the way, it meets what we're looking to do. And oh, by the way, here's the things you mentioned in the survey data. It wasn't just which one did you like. We had lots of questions for them to answer, to give us good feedback. And so we were able to use that data and say, well, help us understand, how wouldn't this? And so they came along, and we were able to, have it. So the second year, we had about 80% fidelity with the use. We're at 90% fidelity this year. And I mean, we're striving for 100, but I'm going to call that as good as it's going to get right now, because I don't want to take away from some of our well-tenured seasoned teachers who know how to use a curriculum and they don't have to follow it exactly and get results, because they're getting results. So I don't want to beat them. I want them to continue to get it. But we're getting there. We're getting 90%, and we're seeing our scores translate now as they're continuing to get older. I want to say that this is the same process we're doing right now. We have some big things in the Lodge Act. We've got a mascot change. We've got a safety fund. We've got the possibility of closing the school. What I know to be true is this: you've got to get the people at the table. Not only do you have to get them at the table, you've got to be willing to get them to discuss. You've got to be willing to listen and hear them. And again, that what. It's not just that what, it's how. So that what and how we do that. And then work through what is it we're trying to achieve. What is it, and you keep every discussion back to what is it we're trying to achieve, how are we going to get there, because at the end of the day, this is what we've got to do. And facilitating that. That's what I know to be true.
All right, so as we wind down our time together today, would you like to ask us any questions or leave us with any closing remarks?
I do want, I've done this a few times, so I don't want to ask questions now. If I come back, I will have questions, but I do want to leave you with this. I do know from the questions you asked, they're highly relational. You are looking for a leader who is going to be highly involved, develop a team, and I hope I've been able to convey that. One of the pieces that really sparked my interest as well, not only is it really a great little hidden gem here that really can be polished up as a community for someone who's willing to commit and stay for some time, because this is a hidden gem that really could shine. And so what struck me was about your wanting to market, and that's my background. All of my dissertation on, all of my research is on how we do school choice, how we market schools, and that's what we do. That's why we kind of stemmed some of the student enrollment crisis. We're actually shifting the school to a choice flow in our district finally, because of some of the marketing we're doing. And so in Indianapolis, I know it's chartered, but you still had to do school choice. You had to market. We increased 200 kids overnight within 2 years. Huge, because we marketed. So I know in this area we're not going to see 200 kids, but we're going to be able to pick up 20, 30 kids easily, and we can build on that. I'm just so glad to see there was a want for that, because it kind of is it's a guilty pleasure, actually. I do like spending my afternoons and evenings after the day going, and how am I going to do this? Because it's fun, that's the work I did, so.
We appreciate your interest in our superintendent position. We're interviewing the three last night tonight. We will contact you if you're selected as a finalist. Thank you so much for coming. We enjoyed meeting with you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
So if you have any feedback forms, you want to finish it up, and
I did.
Crystal will collect them, and we'll make copies for the board. Go on, and 10 minutes, we'll do the next one.
It's a good program. Thank you.
That's 7:05.
It's the only way I can become sweet like Wayne.
Really?
Yeah, it's on right now. Why don't you talk?
Should I just wait?
Just put your hands a little bit.
I'm so sorry. I think I'm. I can.
You know what you guys want? That's exactly.
Yes. Have a couple of different things actually for you.
Oh, thank you.
Gave me two. I wasn't sure how many.
She's offended, but I'm gonna get it. QR code if anybody wants to see the portfolio from Nick Barak. So if you want to do that, actually, you can probably pass one of these around if you'd like to look at it digitally or this way, either way. You guys might see it. So in addition to tonight's feedback, I did give you some comments from last night, so from people that were online, they like picked that last night, picked up the share that with you as well. All set for that?
Good, sure, that we.
Or forget, if anyone like or more feedback forms, we're all set. Perfect.
as we wait for Mr. Palmer to bring our next candidate, we have some new community members who came in, so thank you for taking the time to join us during our first round of interviews. There are sheets over on the table if you would like to fill out any feedback forms. They'll be collected at the end of the interview and then copied and given to all the board members.
We have our last candidate for the evening, Mr. Mark Carr. Hello.
Welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
All of us are going to take turns asking questions, and I will go first. We've had the opportunity to review your resume. Please tell us how your background and experience make you a good fit to be our next superintendent. How will you demonstrate that the success of students is a priority?
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the board for the opportunity to interview. It's a very important position. Honestly, I have a vested interest in the community as well, and so I appreciate the opportunity to interview. I want to say that everything I've done in my career has helped me prepare for this position. I've had a long career. I was a teacher for 15 years. During that time, I was a teacher union president, so I bargained from that side of the table. I was assistant principal and principal at St. John's High School. That was for a period of about 12 years total. That was a very valuable experience. And then I was superintendent for Pollard Public Schools, and I wore many different hats at that time. Pollard was a small school, but the needs were there, and we still have the same reporting requirements to the state. So I was the superintendent, the high school principal, the tech director, the grant manager, anything else that was needed. I gained a lot of experience with that. I developed a lot of community relationships, and I value that. Work-based learning is very important to me, and being part of this community, if I were granted the opportunity to be superintendent, that's an area that I'd like to continue with. I know they do a lot of that, and possibly expand as well. So it's very important to me. Personally, I'm a proud OB grad. It's been a couple of years. I still live on the same farm that I grew up on. Still work the same land that my grandparents did, so that's a thing I'm very proud of. I have, my wife and I have 5 children who graduated from OE and 1 who's currently a student. They say that all our kids are different, and my kids definitely represent that. I've had some that are honor students, some that struggle with school and need support. Most of the time they're well behaved, a couple of them did have to have some consequences for poor choices. So I do think that as part of my background as a parent would help me get in this position as well, because I can relate to the parents and what they're feeling when situations happen. And then the last part of the question, how do you demonstrate success for the students, and how do you show that's a priority? You really have to do that in all your actions. It's an individualized thing as far as student success. And you have to let them know that you care, and you truly care about them as an individual and as a person. And so it's important that you show them that in your actions. You support them, you show up in the classroom. One of the favorite things I like to do is greet the kids when they come in the building every morning. I realized that after being away for a couple of years, that's where I got my energy in the morning, was meeting the kids and talking with them. That's a great way to start the day. And so I really miss that, and I'd love to have the opportunity to work on that again.
All right, thank you. Our next question will be asked by Vice President Susan.
Okay, what practices and procedures do you use to develop trust and confidence with your board and keep them informed?
Obviously, communication is the key thing with board relations. You need to be open and honest at all times. There are things that are going to come up. You need to anticipate some potential problems down the road and communicate those as well. It's important not to be caught off guard if possible. It needs to be both ways. I need to have a board that feels comfortable approaching me, talking to me about issues, and it feels very important to communicate frequently. I would give a weekly report. Sometimes it has to be more frequent than that, depending on what's going on. I would also encourage workshops. They're very beneficial, different trainings, and do those together with board members whenever possible. I'm also a believer in having board retreats. Retreats are, well, they're still board meetings, but you don't have regular business items because those tend to take up the majority of the time. And the retreat just focuses on long-term goals, setting visions, and doing some strategic planning. So I see all that as important things for the board, as well as committee work. I know committee work is something I believe you just started with some committees here, if I saw some of the last minutes correctly. And it gives board members an opportunity to work in smaller groups, have better discussions, and it improves the overall communication of the board.
How will you introduce yourself to the Ovid-Elsie community and maintain engagement with these stakeholders?
I would send a welcome letter out. It would go to all parents, staff, and students. And I would do the same thing in the weekly. I would send it out to the community, introducing myself. I'm in a different role. I'm not a community volunteer if I'm a superintendent, but I would introduce myself and just talk about some of the important things that I would like to help the district accomplish. I would also like to meet with each staff member individually, every staff member in the district. This is something I did when I started at Fowler, and it was very beneficial, right from board members to the teachers, to custodians, bus drivers. Sounds like a daunting task, but if you organize it, you can get through it fairly quickly. But it really gave me an idea of what people wanted from the district, what they thought the strengths were, where they knew we had some goals to reach, and I got to know them as individuals as well. So I would like to do something like that as far as acclimating to the district. OE does a nice job of communication. I would like to continue with that and maybe even expand it to include maybe a seasonal newspaper type insert. I did that at Fowler called the Eagle Flyer, and that's a way to get all the positive things out that the district is doing. doing, what the kids are doing, and it helps with community engagement.
Sometimes we are in situations where our role is less about being the one to come up with the creative ideas and more about facilitating the creative process or helping others get to their ideas implemented. Describe the time when you played this type of role. What did you do to facilitate the process? What were the results?
For this, I'll talk about a time when I was administrator in St. John's. We planned a poverty simulation for the staff where they were assigned a role as a parent. They were given a budget, and then they had to figure out how to get everything that they needed for their kids. And it was a very eye-opening experience for a lot of people, seeing what the struggles that families have. After we completed that training, I had a teacher come to me, and she wanted to start a student food pantry because we had a lot of students that were deprived and were in need of that. And so me and the other administrator in the building encouraged that. She actually secured some grant funding, and we helped with community donations, and it's grown into a huge program. It's set up where students can go online and choose different items if they don't want to come in and pick it out because of the stigma involved with it. They can choose it, and the staff members would volunteer their planning period to get different items, put them in a bag, and then place it in their locker. So at the end of the day, they can just take the bag and take it home. It was a very great thing that's still going on today. When COVID hit, we were able to give kids things that a lot of other schools couldn't. So it was a nice thing that we did. I do understand the middle school here has started a similar project, and I'm very happy to hear that after studying the demographic data of the district and volunteering at the food pantry myself. I know we definitely have a need for that here.
Consider your past accomplishments. What are some of the reasons for your success? How have you overcome the difficulties you may have encountered?
My accomplishments are not really my accomplishments because I've been surrounded by a lot of good people. When I worked on putting together the portfolio that you have with you, it just seemed weird. I know you have to sell yourself when you try to do an interview, but I really have been surrounded by some great people, and I work collaboratively, and I really am blessed to have that. In terms of what I do, I like to listen. I don't form opinions or judgment, and I like to listen to people and get ideas from them. I'm always searching for ways to help and support them. That's kind of what I'm always trying to do is, what can I do to support the staff member? What can I do to support the student? That's always playing in the back of my mind. So that's a continued thing I do. As far as through difficulties, the most difficult times that I've been through a few years ago when we had the continual budget cuts year after year, that was tough. And we kept saying, well, at least it can't get any worse. And after saying that about 3 years in a row, we stopped saying it because it was getting kind of depressing. But we were able to get through that because we built positive relationships and we were open and honest. We listened to ideas and solutions, and we always came to ideas and came through not great because you're reducing, but we never had to lay anybody off. We were able to eliminate different areas through attrition, but that was still a very difficult thing to work through.
How do you recruit, retain, develop, and lead a management team? Give us an example of how you've done this.
All right. In terms of a management team, the one at Fowler wasn't real large. It was in place when I got there, so I was fortunate to have a solid team. But I would say in terms of to recruit, you want to offer a position that is manageable and realistic in terms of expectations. that'll help get people in the door. To retain and develop, you really need to give them all the support you can. You never want to have anybody feel like they're out on an island. That's the worst feeling in the world. And I always make sure I communicate frequently. I believe in working right alongside other administrators whenever possible, especially when they're in need of some help. As far as an example, when I was leaving Fowler after I announced my retirement, like I said, I had a lot of different roles. I wanted to help make the next superintendent successful and give them a little bit better opportunity to do other things. So I worked on developing an assistant high school principal. It's a half-time position. We had a half-time athletic director. So I worked with the board on a plan to do that, and it added another administrator in the building so that he was freed up to do other things. I didn't know who the superintendent would be yet. I wanted to give the support that way. And it also allowed the athletic director to grow into a full-time administrator, which he had desired to do that for several years.
Tell us what your role as superintendent is in the budget development process and how you've been involved in your past roles.
Well, most recently at Fowler, I was in charge of the budget as superintendent. I don't do it by myself. I work closely with the business manager and the finance committee and the board. It's something that needs to be looked at by several eyes, and I feel that it's a group project. I manage the implementation and monitoring of all the grant programs while I was there, including the title programs and the ESSER grants, that's the COVID funds. I managed the implementation of a $17 million bond that was passed right before I got there. I worked through that construction process. Worked on optimizing the borrowing schedule, along with monitoring construction prices and costs, to try to maximize the value through that project, and that was very successful. I did study the most recent audit here at Ovid-Elsie, and I was very impressed with it. And I know I've worked with Wayne in the past, and he's known as a budget guru, and he has been for many years. And if I were lucky enough to be granted this position, I would hope that he would, at least stay on as a consultant and work with me a little bit, because I would love to see how he develops a school budget, especially an individualized one like this.
Tell us how your previous professional experiences have influenced you as a leader.
I've had so many people inspire me. I can share stories. I'll choose a couple of them. A gentleman by the name of Steve Spicer influenced me very early in my career. He was a football coach, he was an athletic director, and he was a math teacher. And he would ask me to help at various times. I was not a football coach, but he would ask me to help with practice. And so I would help whenever I could. And I was helping with a drill, and the kids seemed to have a fairly easy time with it. So when practice got done, I talked to him and I said, I think we might need to notch up the difficulty a little bit on that drill. They were getting it really easy, and he said, no. He goes, that drill is not for them to improve physically. That drill is for them to gain confidence. He goes, once they have confidence, then I can have them do all these other things we want them to do. And that really hit home with me. And I still think of that every time I have relationships with staff and students, especially when somebody's struggling. I think, how can I help instill confidence in them? Because if they don't have confidence, they can't really function. But once they have confidence, they can take on the world and do whatever they dream to do. And it kind of came back full circle, because the person who gave me confidence and actually inspired me to be an educator was just down the hallway in this building. Happened my senior year when I was during the blood drive. I I was an office aide for 1 hour, and Mr. Hose, the math teacher, gave blood and got dizzy and had to set out for a little bit, and that was happening right at the beginning of my office hour. The other teacher at conference period that hour was also not feeling well after donating blood, so they had nobody to cover. Well, with me being a senior, they said, hey, can you go down there and cover for a little bit, just until we find somebody? And I said, sure. So I went down there to the room, and it was freshman algebra. I walked in, and I can remember how Mr. Host taught freshman algebra, and I stepped in and started teaching the class, and it was going pretty well, I thought. And so we went through, we corrected the homework, answered questions. I looked at the next lesson, I said, I can do that. So I showed them how to do those problems. About halfway through that portion, Mr. Hose came and peeked around the corner, looked at me, nodded his head, gave me a thumbs up, turned around and left for the rest of the hour. I finished the class. But that right there instilled the confidence in me, and it's something I'll never forget. God rest his soul. And another just a quick story, but somebody who told me, a good friend of mine who told me I inspired them recently. I grew up knowing Bobby Forback, and we were good friends all the way through school. He came back for the Hall of Fame induction, and I had a chance to talk to him. And he told me, he goes, I have to tell you, you inspired me. I looked at him, and I hadn't talked to him in probably 3-4 years. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, I saw what you did at Fowler when they couldn't find bus drivers. You went out and got trained, and you filled in and drove a bus when they needed that. He goes, I did the same thing. I went out, and I started driving a bus. And so we both reminisced about Jack Nutter and how he used to drive us on the bus to all the events, and it was a good feeling.
Okay, please tell us about a time when you have evaluated and adjusted your communication style to ensure stakeholders feel well-informed and engaged.
An example of this that I'll share is the last round of the COVID funds, the ESSER funds, they called it 11T equalization. And these had a ton of red tape on them, to the point where some schools were just saying it's not worth it, we're not going to do it. Well, Fowler had nearly $300,000. That's a lot of money to a small district. So it wasn't a choice. We had to go for these, but we had to make sure that we followed the guidelines and met all the parameters. So I met with our administrative team. We went through, looked at all the different requirements, all the different groups that we had to interact with, and we came up with a plan to involve the community, staff, students, parents, through a variety of surveys, different meetings, we went to different staff meetings, and it was a series of different ways of communicating and gathering information. Once we had our plan in place, I called one of my contacts at NDE just to see if we were on the right track, and I got some positive feedback from him. So it made me feel really good. And then about 3 or 4 days later, I felt really good when he emailed back and asked if he could share our plan with other districts who were struggling to try to come up with what to do. So that process, it involved the whole community, parents, students, and it ended up being very beneficial because we did receive funds that were very helpful.
Please share an example of a time you have led a sustained multi-year improvement initiative. Be specific regarding the situation, the task at hand, your specific role, and the outcome.
I'm going to share some of the curriculum work at Fowler. When I first got there, talking with the previous superintendent and administrators, it was already determined that there was a need for curriculum alignment, as well as developing some improved instructional practices. It's something they had desired, but it was just coming off of COVID, and nothing really got done during COVID. So that was our focus. And I worked with the teacher leaders to try to come up with a plan. But part of our problem was in a small district like that, you might only have one algebra teacher, one geometry teacher. So there's really nobody for them to confer with and work on curriculum with. And it's pretty tough when you're always working by yourself on curriculum. So we came up with the idea of working in departments 6-12, secondary departments. And so we did that. We developed department chairs with responsibilities. It was a paid position, so that the responsibilities were required. And we used that process whenever we would meet at staff meetings, whenever we did professional development, and they would help lead through the process. We did that with curriculum alignment. We also used a disciplinary literacy and chose different areas of that to focus on for improved instruction. And it really worked out nice because at every staff meeting it had follow-up. We'd take about 10 minutes, and it just became part of our culture in doing that.
Please tell us about your experience with labor negotiation and human resource management.
In terms of bargaining, I've done quite a bit of that. As I mentioned before, I was a teacher union president in St. John's, so I bargained multiple contracts from that side of the table. When I became assistant principal, they asked if I would be on the district team to bargain, just because of my experience and obviously being close with the teachers. And so I did that and continued working on that for a few contracts. And then when I first got to Fowler, my first task was to settle the teacher's contract and support staff contract. And we actually did that in about a week and a half after I got there, which was a good feeling. So I have a lot of experience with bargaining. As far as human resources, I have a lot of experience recruiting and hiring, evaluation, supervision, school policy. I use follow the same policy process that you use here, so I'm very familiar with that. I think it's actually the same person that works with Ovid-Elsie that I work with at Fowler. So I am very familiar with that, and as well as seeing all the professional development. So I'm feeling quite experienced in both those areas.
Please describe how you have engaged and supported staff members in a way that is meaningful to them. How did you know they felt supported?
I'll share a specific one first. We had a Spanish teacher retire, and kind of like what's happening here with Ruben, and we could not find a replacement. We couldn't find a Spanish teacher. So we put out a posting for a world language teacher, just to see what we might be able to find. Initially, we had a French teacher come in and interview, and she was very promising as an educator. So I talked to the board, and we were going to switch to teaching French for our world language. And then the teacher took a job at a bigger district in Grand Rapids. So we were back to square one. So we were to the point where we couldn't find a Spanish teacher. The board did not want Spanish taught online. Neither did I. It's a very difficult subject to do online. So we went back and scoured through different applications. We're also hiring for, we need some English sections covered, and found an English teacher who was from a bilingual who had several Spanish classes in college. I said, all right, I'm going to bring them in and we'll see if this might work. And talked to them. They were excited about the possibility of doing that, but not having taught Spanish before, they were a little bit hesitant, but agreed to give it a try. So I worked through with the Department of Education and got emergency certification. And then I used one of my old connections at St. John's to get a mentor teacher who was a veteran teacher. She's just outstanding, to work with him, and hired her as a mentor, and she helped with lesson plans, and it turned out to be an excellent arrangement, and he felt very supported. He told me that very frequently. Another example of just an overall way of trying to support teachers. When I was principal at St. John's, when we were all shut down for COVID and nobody could even come to the building except administrators, it was kind of a scary time for everybody. And we got to Teacher Appreciation Day. We said, well, this isn't going to work with an email. It's, we're trying to come up with something that we could do. Me and the other administrators, we worked on putting together goodie bags for the teachers. And at Teacher Appreciation Day, we had a plan and map all out, and we went out and personally delivered every teacher a goodie bag. We didn't include some things that we couldn't at school because we were on school grounds. And when I talked to staff members, even to this day, they mention what that really meant to them to do that. So that made me feel good.
Please tell us about a time when your performance did not meet your expectations. What did you learn from that, and how did you apply that lesson?
My very first year as an administrator, I was the assistant principal at St. John's High School. And we have a handbook there that, has the rules spelled out, has consequences spelled out. And when a student would get caught with illegal drugs or alcohol, it's a pretty lengthy suspension. And so I have to follow what the book is. But it started bothering me when the students would be suspended for up to 10 days. They're probably home doing whatever got them caused to be suspended in the first place. And they would come back, and we were just kind of hopeful that, hey, maybe you learned your lesson. But there was no support. And after about a half a year, there wasn't a ton of those, but there were several. And it really bothered me because I was conflicted because I didn't feel it was right. So I talked to the principal and the superintendent, and we came up with the idea to form a committee. And so I put a committee together comprised of students, parents, staff, and law enforcement. And we changed the policy to have substantially shorter suspension time that had a community service component with it. And it also had support for the students and parents that went beyond when they came back to school. We were fortunate to have a school nurse at the time too, who could do an assessment, and we had some outside resources too that were very helpful in that. So I felt much better about the program after that. But initially, I was losing a lot of sleep over that.
Please tell us about a challenge you've experienced in bringing a group with varying perspectives to a consensus on a difficult issue. How did you lead, communicate, and what was the final outcome?
I would say the biggest challenge, whether there was the most to this was during COVID. And the board meetings got very contentious, and you had people from both sides who said we're doing too much, we're not doing enough. And it was a very tough period in education. And so the way I approached it is I tried to have as many individual meetings with people who were upset as I could. And so when people would come to board meetings, I would catch them after the meeting and say, hey, if you want to come in at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, we can talk about this. Or if they're on the other side of the game and they didn't want to come in, we did a Zoom meeting and talk that way. But it really helped me get an idea of where they were coming from. And I was able to talk more freely one-on-one as well too about some of my concerns and share some of the things that we were doing that they were not aware of. So it's one of those things where there really was no full consensus on that, but I do believe that helped the process and we were able to get through it.
All right, as we wind down our time together today, would you like to ask us any questions or leave us with any closing remarks?
I'd like to do both if I could. feel is the main priority for the district in the next year or two?
To hire a new superintendent and be a successful first year.
Okay, that's good. And leading into my second question. What outcomes or changes would you expect to see from the new superintendent, and to which you would deem him or her being successful?
I think some of the things that we've seen or that were in our job posting are some of the things that we're looking to improve on, to build on, maybe communication, improving our student growth, having high human resource and, I can't name them all from the job posting. I think of all those because those were very important to our community and they were very important to us. So those are really like our goals as we head into a new year.
Thank you. And I'll mention real quick too, the portfolio that I provided to you. I know a lot of things don't always come out in interviews. And with a position like this, I just feel it's important that you get a full picture of who I am as a person and as an educator. So I wanted to do that for you. As far as my closing remarks, let me just say that I realize I'm not real good at retirement. I'm a people person, and like I said earlier, I get my energy from the kids in the morning, reading when they come in, and that's something that I really miss. The main reason that I did retire from Fowler was a family health situation, which has greatly improved. And so I am ready and willing to commit, and the only district that I'm willing to commit to is the district where I grew up in. It's where I always called home, always will call home, and it's just a place that I love with my whole heart. Always been the place for our family. I've worked in other districts, and we have our kids here, just because it's the place we want it to be. And the staff here have been so supportive, and I would be honored to serve them as the next superintendent if chosen.
All right, well, we appreciate your interest in our superintendent position. We are completing interviews this evening, and we will contact you if you were selected as a finalist. Thank you for coming. We enjoyed meeting with you.
Thank you.
We all know the drill. If you want to write anything on your feedback forms, we'll collect those and make copies for the board here in just a couple minutes. Be back in our usual time.
We were, I know, James Coon and Kyle Miller asked me to come and
You know his teammates, would you know he swing? Sure. We've gone I think he's national. The one time, but that's like our club president. He's not like, it was fun. He's that normal group. The first one of our events, U13, we went to the first time we went, the first time I think we toured for 10 days, 2 weeks, that's when we came. Everything, okay? And then I, 2 years later, it's not true. Is there another? Our son, Grace Lowe, but yes, your son, but he's always do better. His wife, their team, football center, I don't think we had middle school on Ohio because the name of I'll have to ask more because it's 2012 is all the name of the top. Guards, but once in a while they don't get too close. Very animals.
No, I think.
So we obviously had these between us, so and they grabbed them and grabbed it. I mean, just
And we saw some big brown bear. We saw some cubs. They were all like this, 300 yards away, Copper Bay Hill. Oh, I saw so much in Canada. I like it. Episode. Once more I want to do a little more fishing this time of year, which is what. So first I yeah. Anytime you went to a campground, they always had a and then you took them out and passed the salad. I didn't do high school. My kids needed one. They see the boards, they think it's hot. That must be nice. That place. At the one of the States and Canada. No, we didn't. We used to, but
Did you hand that in? Oh, it already went. It already went? Okay.
Okay, I think we're ready, or you want a couple more minutes to read through, put some thoughts? So here is our task to do the rest of this evening. We're going to go through each of the candidates tonight, talk about the strengths and any questions that you may have, and review anything from yesterday if you'd like. We would like to narrow down to two. Works out well when you do that. We'll see what we can get. And just so you know that once we do that, then I will assign each of you will get assignments to do over the weekend or up to next week for the second round to contact references. Not only what they have there, but I'll see if I can bring up more, because I'd like to get about typically 5 to 6 different people that you could actually talk to. And we split those up so you don't have to, no one has too big of a role, and then just report back to the board when we come back. We should look at some questions, develop some questions for the second round, and finally talk about the presentation if we want to do that or what our plan is. So does that make sense? All right. So let's start with Michael Dunn. And what did you see as strengths of Mr. Dunn? What did you like about him?
I said he was personable, warm, seemed very genuine, he made eye contact. I love that he mentioned a visit to the country kitchen, so it was a specific reference to somewhere in our community. I felt like he really connects, and his goal is to connect with the community. Very hands-on in the initiatives, when he was giving examples of reading or what was happening in the district, even though he's at the assistant superintendent level, he's very involved in those things. I thought he was very knowledgeable, and I also love that his ED and his EDS are based on school choice.
I had some of the same things as Burke had. The fact that he was a teacher stood out to me, the fact that he mentioned the country kitchen, community events, open houses, parent advisory. Those are his strengths.
And to add to that, some of it, he was kind of humble, maybe towards himself, and talked about more of a team effort and working with others, and getting other people's perspectives.
About questions, do you have any questions that you might, you said something, it's like, I have a
question about that.
Not questions to ask, questions about him right now.
Yeah. Anything that you, or that we're looking at is something that's like, I'd like to know more about that or something along those lines.
Well,
We
go
talk-
ahead, no.
You talk about marketing, bringing, people into the district of school of choice and whatnot. I find that as a interesting take. How do we market ourselves better than what we are?
And he found it's easy to bring in 20 to 30 new people.
He noted that they did a lot of surveys at a school that he was at. Taking a survey is one thing, but what did they do with the information to really activate what they were surveying?
Walmart Korak, strengths that we saw with,
I think one of the strongest things is that, and he said it in his interview too, that you try to sell yourself in an interview, but before he even sat with us, even though we'd seen his credentials, so many of our questions could be answered in just this, so to be able to lead with that amount of background for us, I think that was huge. That he wants to collaborate with Wayne to branch that, sorry, working on the word, transition. I feel like he's hometown, he's warm, he's confident, he values listening big time. I liked his idea about the seasonal insert in the newspaper to keep the community more involved.
I like that he greets the kids in the morning, talked about board retreats and building workshops for board members and building our team here.
I like that he had a human component, the empathy that he instilled in his staff with doing a poverty simulator for his staff and
The thing I like about him is he kind of has a servant's heart. He he's the type of guy who, whatever they needed to be done, he would do it. I know he works at the food bank up there in Elsie, and he does a lot of that type of stuff outside of the school district itself.
Very supportive of teachers and what they need.
I like that he pointed out that he has 5 kids and they all have different needs.
6 kids.
6?
Just 5.
Oh, okay.
Don't leave one out, just saying.
And you have to parent differently.
I agree with everything everyone said, but I like the fact that he talked about being on both sides of the negotiation table. I think that's crucial for us, for teachers and for the district. And I think I remember him teaching ninth grade algebra, because I think we were that close in school. I think I remember that incident. It was a good story.
what questions might you have that, questions or wonders, I guess you'd call them, everybody said it there.
I would just want want to hear more. He talked about his experience in human resource management, and he specifically mentioned recruiting, hiring, supervision, school policy, and evaluation. I would just want to dig deeper into that.
So maybe you put that in the back burner, and we go back and look at last night's candidates. We had Steve Keskus. Anything that you wanted to add that we talked about last night, or I know we had some people want to let questions percolate for tonight, so anything you want to add? Or Andrea Redmond, or Jay Larner, the three we had last night. Okay, so the next step is we need to see where we're at, and if we can narrow down. So you kind of do this, look at it two ways. I prefer to do the positive way. Is there any one candidate that you definitely want to bring back for a second interview?
Mark Clark. I agree. Agree. Agree.
He's fine, that's fine, but you just want us to give our own on who we think to be, like, I don't want to just give that, you're like, who's one that you want to have for that.
Perhaps we could do this. This may be, maybe I could give you a few minutes. Then we have a chance to hear everybody else. Put down on paper for yourselves or in your mind 2 people you'd like to bring back, and I'll come back and ask each one. We'll see where we're at after that. So I'll give you a few minutes to work through that. Okay. We're ready to give this a try? All right. Dr. Hoff.
Yeah, I kind of like that, like the 3, but I'll go with 2.
Tell us your third, just
Well,
in case we'll see how it meshes with everybody else.
I like the first gentleman, Stephen. I like to see what he had to say. I like Mark, and I'd like to see what that Mike Dunn had to say. So that's who the 3 that I do.
Cascus, Horak, and Dunn.
My first two picks would be Horak and Redmond. And then if I had to do a third, it would be Dunn.
I'm Horak and Redmond also. I didn't pick a third.
Okay.
I could get on board with Doug. He was in my mind.
We don't have to have three, but I'm just saying, we're just gonna see where we're all at. Mr. Miller?
Dunn and Cascus.
Mr. Nash?
And Horak, none.
What was that?
Horak, none.
Ms. Williams?
Mark Horak and Andrea Redmond.
President Ward?
Horak and Dunn.
So if I look at it that way, it looks like Michael Dunn has 6, and Mark Horak has 6, and Andrew Redmond has 2. I don't think I have any other names. I mean, I'm sorry, I have Cascus on here, but I think he's on here one time.
You should have two, because him and I put it fine, maybe he didn't put mine. Me.
Are we counting all?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, there is 2. My apologies, I can't even remember right here. Yes, I had 2, yes. Yep.
Mrs. Williams, who did you?
They had 3 for Redmond.
I picked Redmond and.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if you asked me for a third, though, my third would have been Cascus.
Well, I'm just saying, no, my apologies, I taught math, actually. So, so, usually when we get this many, we look at that and say there's overwhelming enough to say, let's bring those 2 back. With 6 and 7 wanting to. Because you look at it, and Cascus now has 2 and Redmond has 3. So it doesn't appear that, make sure I have it right. I mean, they don't have us, usually when we get less than 50%, we're probably not wise to bring them back. We want to look at the ones where we have the highest, almost, we're probably not ever going to get, we may not ever get consensus on all 7 for each, but can we live with the 2 that have 6 votes?
I think, I also think that with the 2 that interviewed tonight, I think both of them, Michael Dunn said that, he wanted to stay a while, a long time in this, and Horak lives here, this is the only place he could go, so both of them are going to stay, a longer time and commit to the area. That's the reason I kind of worry about Stephen, and I'll just give my 2 cents on Andrea. I think she was great. I think if she had a year or 2 as an assistant superintendent, I think she'd be my first one. But that part just bothers me a little bit.
call them when we're done with the meeting, and I'll call all the candidates, and I'm sure we'll get it all set up, and I'm sure they'll accept, so we're good to go with that one. And I did want to, one piece I forgot to tell you that was asked last night about the background checks. Everybody that was interviewed is getting a full background check. They're not only the criminal, that one comes back very quickly when it's electronic, but it's the calling and making calls, the educational background, and their employment. And there's an agency that does that for us. So all of them are getting all checked out. And we will have results by next time around, there's no question about it. So I did start some questions, and again, they're just starters. You gotta look them over. Some of them we've already asked probably, and one of them didn't highlight like I wanted it to, because this round we usually will. It's more conversational, it can be. It depends on a lot on you, and you want to get to know the person, see if they're going to be a good fit for you. So if there's a follow-up in like the first round, we were trying to compare as best we could each candidate in life circumstances. And this one, again, if they say something, even when you ask a question, if they say something and you want to know more about that, or you thought about something that maybe is related to it, any board member could just ask that question, okay? Obviously, there are certain questions you can't ask, and you won't do that anyway. For example, you couldn't ask, do you own a house? That sort of thing, because that's legally you can't ask that sort of thing. I'm just saying. So you probably will be fine. I'd be shocked if you came up with anything that's going to not be appropriate to ask. So it's more conversational, and again, I actually encourage some follow-up, because there are some things that you may want to know specifically to Ovid-Elsie or to that candidate. I know Dr. Duff, you brought up, some budget questions. Maybe there's something that's sticking in your crown about budgets. When they say you ask a budget question, you may have something specific you want to follow up on. That sort of thing. We also, there may be, like, we look at the two candidates that we have, and I can write some questions up that would go along with, something else you want to know about that particular candidate. So a lot of the questions will be the same, but we may throw some in there, or we should throw some in there that are tailored to that particular candidate. So it could be different. So that's what we have. I have some starters here. I think number 3 is kind of a good one to use. I put number 1 on here because I'm trying to think of a warm-up question, so to speak, just to start out with. So that's the only reason it's there. I put that there on purpose. So usually we're looking at, with the presentation, usually an hour and 15 minutes gets the job done. About 15 questions again. We aren't as concerned about the time limit. They're not going to get their questions ahead of time. We're not as concerned about the time limit because we want you to feel comfortable with the person. There's only one other one, so if they have to wait, they have to wait. Never had an issue with it, so I don't. It's more important to learn about the person and them to learn about you as well. So others that I think are good, I started working on the end of these. Something that you mentioned last night, 19, something about actually it was before 19, it started at 18. Trying to craft something along the lines of having, 7 bosses and 7 different ideas. How do you really bring those together? So kind of working with that one a little bit. And there was another one in here. So it was 19, and there was another one about, 19 is the other one that I thought, because we asked about, someone asked, how can we ask really what expectations from the board?
We're not gonna give results beforehand, but we're streaming live.
I know, are we not supposed to talk more specifically about it, if it's still streaming live, but we're not getting any questions ahead of time?
That's a, we can,
We can talk about them by number.
yeah, I mean, I can talk about my number. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be a huge issue.
How many are we picking from this?
I would recommend about 15, and these are just ideas. And really, what I'll do is I'll work on questions in the next couple of days, and then I'll email them all out to you, and you can comment about, is this kind of what, just basically wanting to know, is this what you were wanting to find out with the question?
Can we email you like which questions we like, and then you can kind of decide with the comment?
Well, I kind of like to narrow it down some tonight.
Okay. Because I've already been circling the ones that
But if, and I'll be honest, if you all would, I'm sure that, you feel more comfortable, I'm sure that you can say right now that anybody's listening, we're going to shut off because we're going to talk about questions. That, it's probably a wise thing to do. I did this at another district here recently. So would that make everybody feel a little better if we did that?
That's okay,
Yes.
I feel like it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
So if anyone's listening, we are, because we're going to talk about specific questions to ask the next candidate, we'll be shutting off the live stream.